We would like to welcome into the Montreal Now show, Francois Renaud, doctor. Is it Dr. Renaud?
No, I do not have the doctor. I don't have a PhD. I have a master's. You can just call me Frank.
Okay. Frank. All right. I like that. Hi, Frank. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
Frank is a couples therapist and a psychotherapist based here in Montreal, and we had a lot of fun with this topic this afternoon in our meeting before we were starting the show. And basically, what it is, a little bit of tabloid news, a little bit of spilling the tea, as it were. It seems that the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, married to Taylor Swift. Now, Travis has a couple of Super Bowl rings. Taylor Swift has more money than some nations. They say they have never had any arguments. Now, Francois, I'm calling BS on this one. Is this even possible?
Well, you have to think about what do they actually meant by like having an argument or having a conflict. A lot of people, when they think about having arguments, they think about maybe people raising their voices, shouting, maybe not being super nice or being very emotional. But to me, having an argument or a conflict is having a difference with the other person. We also have to consider that the relationship is pretty young. They've only been together for about 2 years now. So it is possible that in the first 2 years, they haven't met a lot of like significant differences, and they've been able to maybe talk about the small differences that they have hit on the road. And if it's not a major difference, most people will, if you have a certain level of maturity, remain relatively calm and be able to find some form of I'll say compromise, even though it's not necessarily the word I like to use, but like finding a compromise, remaining relatively calm. But eventually they're probably going to hit more important stuff in the relationship as they experience different things, such as maybe having kids or maybe moving around, stuff like that, where you have to make decisions and you don't always have the same needs and desires. Eventually maybe, sex might be different for both of them. So obviously saying after 2 years we've never had a fight, it can make a lot of sense. If you consider that having a fight is necessarily like maybe shouting and not being very nice to your partner.
I don't know, doctor. Sorry, I keep calling you doctor. I don't know, Francois. 2 years, I'm sure at some point Taylor Swift walked through their bathroom and got the spiked heel of her Jimmy Choo shoes snagged on a towel that Travis left lying there. And said, will you pick up your towel? I just can't see it happening. Another famous couple, George Clooney and his wife Amal, also say that they have never had an argument. Now, with both these couples, both of them are quite wealthy. Do you think that might have something to do with it, that there are people around who can take care of all the little things so they can stay argument-free?
It is possible that, sometimes having more wealth can, take away certain daily things that might be irritating for the common person who doesn't have necessarily those resources. But studies have shown that even people, whether they're rich, poor, or medium range salary, have arguments at one point in the relationship. You also have to look at some people, they don't necessarily like to have arguments. So they might avoid talking about things that make them unsatisfied. So they might be building up frustration where eventually it might blow out in another way. Or sometimes what happens is you accumulate frustration, and that has another impact in a more subtle way where you might be more distant as time goes by. You might have less sexual desire. So I have couples quite a lot who come see me who say exactly the same thing as Taylor and Kelce and George Clooney and his wife, where they're going to say we have very good communication, we never fight, we have a good, we're very loving, we're very affectionate. For some reason, we don't necessarily have sex anymore, or we don't have as much sex as we used to, or we're not as passionate as we used to. And then when I start questioning certain things, I realize there's quite a lot of underlying frustrations that haven't been discussed. So there are people who fall into like what I call a collusive alliance where we don't talk about the difficult things. We repress the actual frustrations and insatisfactions that we have, and eventually those linger in other aspects where they're not directly linked, but they have an impact. And typically, it's in sexual desire that I tend to find where the symptoms come about.
So for us mere mortals, it's figure it out, talk it out, and get on with things, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, sometimes it has to go beyond just talking it out, because it's not because you talked it out that you're necessarily going to move past the actual issue. So I'll give you the example when it comes to sex, for instance, or even just like cleaning around the house. You talk to your partner and you say, I'd like to have more sex, or I'd like you to do more of the dishes or more of the cleaning. And the other person says, well, I'm happy to hear that you want more sex, or I'm glad to hear that you want to do more. You want me to do more of this cleaning, but it doesn't necessarily mean, one, I want to do it more. Mm-hmm. So then we might be hitting an emotional impasse or an emotional gridlock where it's like, I want something that I don't necessarily want to offer you. And that's where people get snagged in the relationship, and they might try to make an effort at the beginning, but they might come back to their kind of original position of not wanting as much sex or not wanting as much cleaning or whatever the issue might be, spending more money, spending less money, seeing the in-laws or not seeing the in-laws. And if you don't get what you want, how do you react to that? When your partner says, by their actions or even by what they say, I don't want to answer your need, that's when the communication techniques don't work. It's your emotional regulation to not getting necessarily what you want. That becomes the issue.
Isn't compromise a key as well?
That is the actual fatal error.
Oh, really?
That quite a lot of people do. Because not that when we think about compromise, people think like, okay, well, we'll find a middle ground. But the thing with the middle ground sometimes is that both partners are actually not satisfied.
It's not good enough for either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You actually have to, maintaining your integrity is more important than compromising. Because a lot of people, when compromise, they're compromising themselves. They're compromising their integrity. So if I say, let's find a compromise when it comes to sex. I want to have sex 3 times a week. I want to have sex 1 time a week. Okay, well, let's have it 2 times. But that second time we have it, I don't want to have sex. It's not interesting sex. So I feel compromised. I feel like I'm using my integrity when I'm having that sex. And the other person says, well, it's not really that interesting of a sexual relationship. So it's not a question of just compromising. It's maintaining your integrity, but having the flexibility and being solid with your position. It doesn't mean having integrity being rigid, which a lot of people tend to confuse a lot, but just compromising. A lot of people tend to compromise, and that's exactly when they come see me. They've compromised too much in the relationship.
Huh. Well, you've shed some light on this. Thank you very much, Francois. It's kind of you to join us this afternoon, and food for thought, definitely. Thank you very much.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Okay.
Pride is like love. You feel it in your heart. iHeartRadio, Canada's #1 streaming app for radio and podcasts, including iHeart Pride Canada, your favorite hits, and must-have party bangers, plus personalized and curated playlists like Back in the Day Pride.
Come together, celebrate love.
Take Pride with you, anytime, anywhere. Just ask your smart speaker to play iHeart Pride Canada. Stream us on your phone or listen now at iHeartRadio.ca.